What's up, y'all? I'm back. Welcome back to the Tuesday night live stream. And so I got a couple of topics that have popped up in the last couple of hours that I would be remiss if I didn't discuss it. And so these are kind of, I'm preempting my normal conversation. Um, but I'm gonna try. I got a couple of things that I just got to get off my chest. I know um, earlier today, we kind of got hit with a whammy. If you're of a certain age, if you're a black person of a certain age, um, D'Angelo was kind of a, he's the forefront of that neo soul movement, and um, he passed. And it was pancreatic cancer, from what I've understood, from what I've read, in terms of reports from his family and whatnot, and media outlets. And let me fix my camera here. Um, and it's challenging. He's not much older than I am, and one of the things whenever we get one of these deaths that happen, when these celebrity passings that happen, um, and it seems like kind of a recent thing because social media has kind of made it so that we are addicted to offering commentary on everybody's appearance. Um, and it's typically played for a joke. I do remember very clearly when Chadwick Boseman passed. Um, Around the time he was going through, you could see that there's clearly something going on with uh, he was losing weight and stuff like that, and you would see a lot of really people trying to get them jokes off, really mean spirited jokes about his weight. And I'm not saying it was the same degree with D'Angelo, but I saw those jokes too, when they were talking about his public appearance. And what I'm asking y'all to do is have a little bit of discretion when you see somebody, a celebrity or something, or even somebody in person or somebody that you know. Um, you got to be really careful when you start commenting on somebody's physical appearance, especially if it's sudden onset or rapid or jarring or whatnot, um, because you never quite know what somebody's battling. Like I said, the stuff with Red D'Angelo um, wasn't as egregious as what Chadwick was going through, but it just gives you one of those things to pause, because I did see some of those, I got to get these jokes off kind of culture that we live in social media world. And, it's just really being cautious of how we react, especially these people in the public spotlight and whatnot. But even people in your personal life, be very cautious about how you comment on somebody's um, physical appearance. You never quite know what uh personal challenges they're going through. Okay. Um, the jokes I saw were along the lines of D'Angelo's weight gain. I know he had a couple of struggles, some substance stuff, I think. But then also we don't know what his illness prognosis was. He kept that quiet. He didn't really say anything about it. And so um like I said, we're the ones that are in the dark about this kind of stuff. And uh, I guess my thing is, I saw how a lot of the same people that had the jokes when Chadwick passed, the ones that were still posting the nasty jokes about his weight and stuff, they're the ones that are up there acting like they're the most devastated. Really, kind of an ugly situation. So just let's have a little bit more compassion when you see, um, especially black celebrities, as they age, as we get older. There's this weird thing that we do, with our celebrities. And I know, growing up in the anybody can kind of get it kind of culture where, anybody can get roasted. But I feel like with black celebrities, we have this weird, like this Peter Pan syndrome kind of thing, that we do not allow them to age, and we make fun of them. I look at well, all the jokes that are going around are genuine and stuff like that. You know, Cisco, where everybody's got to get their jokes off as people get older and as they age. And there's not a lot of gray shown, and it shows a real, um, I don't know, fear of aging. I don't know how to phrase it. I don't know exactly how to explain it. But it's really an ugly thing. I don't necessarily care much for it, especially how we talk about, you know, black folks that have that spotlight and how we discuss them aging. And there's always some nasty joke attached to it. And it's the Twitterification of stuff, because Twitter's kind of made it so that everybody can get them jokes in and offer a commentary about somebody's physical appearance. But like I said, it feels like it's really pointed and targeted at black celebrities as they get older. Um, just my take on it. So I don't have a lot of organized thoughts because I'm still wrapping my head around this, but I just it's just a word of caution, y'all. When we talk about when we talk about people's transitions and stuff like that, be cognizant of how you talk about them while they're here. Okay, you never know what somebody's fighting, and it's practicing a little bit of emotional discipline. You know, you don't need to make commentary on everybody's appearance that you see online. You don't need to make commentary on everybody's appearance that you see in public. It's a weird need. It's a weird reaction. It's a really ugly reaction, um, where you feel like you have to make that level of commentary every single time. You know, I understand getting them jokes off. I understand trading insults or whatnot, but sometimes it be unprompted, and that's kind of an ugliness. Okay, um, and it's use a little bit of empathy. You know, if you're younger, you're going to get older too, and you don't always have control over what happens as you age. You know, you could be young and in shape now, and a car accident or some kind of thing that you didn't, some hereditary thing you weren't aware of, put you on the shelf, and then next thing um, you are in that position where your body appearance is up for ridicule or debate. So just be real cautious of that. Um, Another thing, real quick. I'm probably gonna be coming off of Twitter. I'm not even gonna tell you my Twitter handle, bro. Um, I'm I'm realizing that Twitter puts me in an ugly place. And a lot of what happens on Twitter is um and we all family here. The Nazis have essentially taken over Twitter. And Elon doesn't seem to really care. Like he doesn't seem to care one whit one way or the other. And so we have a lot of Nazi stuff going on Twitter. I got called a groid. I know that's supposed, and somebody hinted at the N word. They couldn't call me that directly, but they kind of that they called me that without calling me that. Um, these ends, it just puts me in an ugly place. I don't take this stuff seriously, but I don't like who I am when I respond to that kind of crap. I really don't. I don't like the kind of person I am when I respond to that racism. And it doesn't bother me. And I don't want people to think, oh, it's hurting my feelings or anything. It really doesn't. But um, I don't like the person I become when I'm interacting with people on Twitter. There's a real pervasive ugliness on Twitter um, that I don't think people quite understand. And it's kind of more of a recent invention. Um, a lot of those accounts that got banned on Twitter were banned for a reason. And by opening the gates and allowing them back on there, they are allowed to poison discourse um, with, you know, like I said, I got called slurs and stuff today, like today, commenting on a political post, like slurs, like slurs. And Twitter seems to be cool with it. So I'm coming off of it, I'm probably going to be decreasing my output there and probably be trying to refocus a little bit, see what I can build on Threads. I don't necessarily want to go to Blue Sky. I've tried it's not for me. Um, I think Threads is kind of my speed. And so that's probably where you're going to start seeing more of my presence there. And it's going to be more front facing. Twitter, I don't, yeah. I took it on to I had started my Twitter account to promote my writing, And I don't necessarily want to, like, Twitter is the reason why, one of the main reasons why I got all them death threats about writing about black comic book characters. And so I've had a real weird relationship with Twitter, and I think it's about time to hang it up on that platform. Just because it's a hellscape. Um, and most of the people on there are bots, auto reply, or somebody in Russia trolling. I don't understand specifically what it is. And I actually, to the point now, I mean, not now, it's not recent, but I actually steer my clients away from Twitter. Like, when I have marketing clients, I don't I am really strident about not having them post anything on Twitter, just because of the environment and the way that people interact with media on there. People are at their worst consistently on Twitter. And it's almost like there are people that just lurk on there waiting for the opportunity to jump all over somebody they disagree with. Um, you know, and here's the thing. I stumbled into a wasp's nest of neo-Nazi stuff, literally just replying under a comment from the Young Republicans. And so, yeah, yeah. Take that how you will. Maybe ask yourself why all those neo-Nazis that call people slurs are lurking in comments threads by Young GOP, the Young Republicans organization. And a lot of it has to do with, because I was commenting on the thread that got unearthed, the Telegram thread that got unearthed, that was literally filled with a who's who of the leadership of the Young Republican Party, um, exchanging some of the most Nazi jokes and talking about gassing their enemies, um, um, sexually violating their enemies. I'll say that. Um, lots of hard R's, lots of really, really ugly stuff. And it casts a very interesting image over who the leadership of that party is and who is attracted to it, because this is a long thread, and it's not just low power people. These are people, there's a guy who's actually currently in the administration who's in that thread. And people that hold different offices and things like that is in that thread. I think it's a Telegram thread, where, it's basically they're letting all their racism out. It's crazy. If you ever read it, Politico just dropped it, and it's actual shots and screenshots from this thread. And they're trying to distance themselves. Some of the people that actually were saying the slurs are saying, well, I mean, that doesn't represent, I am embarrassed and appalled. I'm embarrassed and appalled and blah, blah, blah. They weren't embarrassed and appalled when they were typing it. They're embarrassed and appalled now that they got outed. Really ugly thing. I'll get into it later on. Let's move on to stuff that I actually enjoy. We're still in the IDW Transformers universe, y'all. All right. So, and for those that are keeping up, if this is your first time joining, I'm standing 10 toes down and saying, the IDW Transformers universe is probably one of my favorite comic book universes, period. There's so much in there. There's so much world building. There's so much character development. It's really interesting how they construct the prehistory of the Transformers and the modern history of the Transformers. And it makes sense. It's logical. They're not just doing things to do things. There's a string. There's a storytelling that's actually going on. This real actual storytelling. And it's storytelling I kind of miss. Like, on the big two, I'm enjoying, I can't front, I am enjoying the absolute universe. I'm not making any secret about that. I'm enjoying the Ultimates. I'm not necessarily enjoying what they're doing with the X-Men, which is one of my favorite properties. I'm not thrilled about how the X-Men in Marvel is going right now. It's kind of a jumbled mess, and they're just doing stuff. And it's like when they run out of ideas, we're gonna rehash Age of Apocalypse, and this time it's the Age of Revelation. We make Cypher a mega villain. It feels like they completely lost direction because as flawed as the Krakoa era was, and at some point it just became, some parts was just, we're going to see how many mutants we can torture for shock value, or how many of your favorites we can hurt in, like, Sins of Sinister, how grotesquely we can injure or um, incapacitate or wound, or what we can do to treat characters that you like poorly. As much flawed as the Krakoa era was, at least there was what felt to be some kind of cohesive story going through the books. And the From the Ashes era has been trash. It has been. I like Gail Simone stuff. I think I liked Evel Ewing's stuff. I liked most of it. But a lot of the From the Ashes stuff is just disconnected. Doesn't necessarily feel like it's telling we don't quite know where the story is. And then as soon as we start getting answers, they start canceling books and rushing to conclusions on other books. And now we're in the Age of Revelation, and it's taken over all the X books. And I don't want another Age of Apocalypse. I wasn't even going to talk about that tonight, but I just got to say that. I got to get that off my chest. Marvel, you need to fix this. There need to be, like, and this is just me spitballing here. I think you kind of needed to have some kind of off ramp for the From the Ashes era before you just plunge us directly into the new teams and the new status quo. Because a lot of people really did enjoy the Krakoa era. And I feel like a disservice was kind of done to them with the abruptness of how, okay, now we're in the From the Ashes era, and it's like this psychological whiplash of it. It just, there's a lot of issues with it, and it doesn't feel like it was necessarily coherent. But I also feel like they kind of rushed into the Krakoa thing anyway. I know Nimrod was set up as the big bad. I don't necessarily feel like they brought in Tony Stark to solve the problem. Why is Iron Man in here? It's an X-Men book. I understand he's married to Emma Frost now. Why is he a central character in this whole thing? Why? But they rushed the ending of it, but at least it's coherent. I don't know what the hell this From the Ashes thing was. This year has not been necessarily great for X titles. That's all I'm putting out there. Anyway, I'm digressing. Unlike the From the Ashes X-Men era, the IDW Transformers universe really focused on telling stories and arcs and really building it out. Even when, people got mad because they made Megatron an Autobot, where he renounced the Decepticon cause. There's a whole story arc that goes along with that. It's not just random out of the blue stuff. It makes sense for the character that they have built for him, where he's not a one-note villain. He's a complex villain who's actually, in his mind, he's driven by inner sense of righteousness, where it's not evil for the sake of being evil. There's plenty of people in that Transformers universe that's evil for the express sake of evilness. Megatron wasn't one of them. But here's a group that is evil for the sake of evil. So we're going to talk about the Decepticon Justice Division from the IDW Transformer universe. Now I explained that, in the Transformer universe, there are super Transformers, ones that have higher baseline strength and durability and abilities that aren't seen in other Transformers. And so these are going to be the main, like some of your main names. You're going to have Grimlock, you're going to have Optimus Prime, you're going to have Megatron, and then a couple of others that are mixed in there, like Fortress Maximus. I think Ultra Magnus was one. But there's a concept in there, and it has a lot to do, and I'm not going to go into the spark and how people are, how the Autobots and Decepticons are born. But there's some stuff that needs to go in there. So there's a concept of what's called a 0.1% spark. and I think it's a bright blue spark. It's either bright blue or bright green. I can't remember what the outline color is, but it's a spark that's different from all the other sparks. The spark is what they build the Transformers around, like for a while. Then they found another way to produce new Transformers so they don't have to rely on harvesting sparks. But the spark is basically the animating life force of the Transformers. Okay. And some sparks shine differently than others. Some are different colors. I believe the blue sparks it's either blue or green sparks. I can't remember. I got to go back and look, but they're considered 0.1 percenters. And that normally means you're dealing with the Transformer that has a higher baseline of power. They have special abilities. Optimus Prime is basically Superman of the Transformers universe. Like, he's stronger, he's more durable, and he can bang with some of the heaviest hitters in that universe. Megatron's on the other side of that. And not only does he have that super strength, but he can also manipulate different forms. He can manipulate and channel and direct different forms of energy through his fusion cannon. And so Starscream, I still think that they have where he can exist without a body. Like, he can exist in an incorporeal state, and he's functionally immortal. And so you have all these different abilities, right? So in the Decepticons, you have the Decepticon Justice Division. So not only are they 0.1 percenters, which means they have abilities well beyond the typical abilities of other Transformers, but they're also Phase Sixers. And Phase Sixers are the Megatron's kind of elite combat units. They're super weapons. They are meant to go into planets and break the backs of any resistance. So they're, Megatron had a 6 or 7 phase way of sterilizing a planet, and the Phase Sixers were near the end of that. So not only are the Decepticon Justice Divisions 0.1 percenters, but they're also Phase Sixers. Keep that in mind. Okay. So they are Megatron's ideological enforcers. They go out and they punish anybody that is working against the Decepticon cause. Now you're going to say, well, the Autobots are working against the Decepticon cause. There's very specific things that you have to do in order to land on their list. And some Autobots have landed on the Decepticon Justice Division's list. But more times than not, it's about Decepticons that disobey Megatron's orders or defect from the Decepticon cause. Those are the two things. And you need to understand, in the IDW Transformers universe, not every Autobot or Decepticon is with this war thing. There's a lot of unaffiliated robots who didn't pick a side one way or the other. But there's also some that they just want to exist. It's not Soundwave. I think it's Thunder. It's one of the Seekers. It's one of the planes. Thunder. What is his name? Anyway, he is one of, he's the purple one. You remember the 3 planes? He is the purple one. I think it's Thunderclap. I'm looking it up now. Yeah, like Thunderclap, he just kind of wants to exist and have a quiet and peaceful life. He even has a pet. I think he has a dog or a cat. Like, he just wants to chill. He's not really interested in the war aspect of it. And somehow he's managed to escape the Decepticon Justice Division's ire. It might be Skywarp. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to recall this stuff off the top of my head. But active traitors to the Decepticon cause, or people that have interfered in Decepticon Justice Division business, end up on that list. Grimlock ended up on that list because he had partnered with some Decepticons that were on that list. And he actually helped them escape from the Justice Division. And good luck, to the Decepticon Justice Division trapping up Grimlock. Not that Grimlock, bro. The Grimlock in the IDW universe is literally Optimus Prime's equal. And he's not a very nice guy. He is an anti-hero. Grimlock in that universe is kind of like Frank Castle. And he's not dumb. That's the other side. He's not dumb. He's a sinister Optimus Prime. All right, so let's get into the. So they're tasked with hunting down deserters and punishing them for crimes that don't align with Megatron's vision of the Transformers. And so it was really interesting when Megatron defected to the Autobots, he ended up on the Decepticon Justice Division's list. They are ideologues, so that you need to understand that about them. Okay, so here are the different members, and each one of them is named after a city in ancient Cybertron. Um, you got to read these books, man. Like I said, the lore is thick. So each one of the Decepticon Justice Division is named after an ancient city in Cybertron. So you have Torn or Tarn. Tarn transforms into a dual fusion tank. He's probably the only one that actually transforms into a vehicle, if I remember correctly. Tarn, his ability is his torture ability, because each one of them comes with an ability to actually torture and maim and inflict harm upon the other Transformers that are on the list. His is very interesting. He's the leader. He kills by basically he has a way to speak to a Transformer and make their spark explode. Basically, he's giving them a heart attack. And so he can communicate in a frequency that makes their heart explode. Yeah. And so that's normally how he finishes them off after they've been thoroughly tortured and it's time for them to go. Tarn normally gives them a speech and makes their heart blow up, makes their spark explode. Kaon transforms into an electric chair, and he slowly electrocutes anybody that any Transformer that they catch. They put them he transforms into an electric chair, and slowly it slowly cranks it up until he like gets what he wants out of them. And so he transforms into an electric chair. There's Voss. He transforms into a sniper rifle. I don't know if that's right or not. I got to double check that one. I got to check my notes on that one. Voss, he has a faceplate that is literally the Decepticon logo. And when he pulls it off, that faceplate is covered with drills and hooks and all kinds of mechanical things. And so he is probably the sickest one of all of them, because he removes his face and puts it on his target's face, and it basically disfigures them and tortures them. Really jarring, uncomfortable to watch. These are all robots. They're all robots, but it's uncomfortable to watch. It's uncomfortable to read. Helix, he transforms into a smelter, a giant furnace where he burns his captives alive. Like he burns them alive. Okay. And I can never say the name. It's Terrasus or Terrace. Thesaurus. That's what it is. Thesaurus. That's what it is. Thesaurus. He turns into a grinder. So he grinds and shreds his victims. Like, think of like a car shredder, but he grinds them into raw material. Okay. And they represent different types of violence. Tarn is kind of ideology as a weapon because he uses his voice. Kaon represents obedience without thought. Voss is dehumanization. He removes their face. Helix is industrialized cruelty, and Thesaurus is bureaucratic violence. Like, these are the different ideological, the different things that they represent within the DJD. And now that's a lot of this is up for interpretation, y'all. So understand that this is just my interpretation of some of this stuff. They honestly believe that this is a purity test, and they are pursuing the ideological purity of the Decepticons. But that's how they serve justice. But their targets are their allies, essentially. And the Decepticon Justice Division is feared within the ranks of the Decepticons. Nobody knows when they're coming. Nobody knows where they are in the universe. And more times than not, nobody survives to tell the tales of what they do. And so their mystery, their aura precedes them. Okay. I feel like I'm leaving off one because I think there's one more who doesn't. She's kind of like the bookkeeper and the person that does all the repairs of the Decepticon Justice Division. So I need to make sure I'm including her because she's a little tiny thing. Oh, and then they also have one that they called the Pet. Okay. So, okay, first of all, there's Nickel. She is the medic for the Decepticon Justice Division. And so she doesn't torture anybody, she just repairs them. They're actually within their ranks, they're pretty friendly to each other. They just don't like anybody else. There's also Agent 13, or Agent 113. Agent 113 was the brother of the current Ultra Magnus. Ultra Magnus is a power suit. Basically, it's a power suit that different Cybertronians wear. So a specific family has the spark that allows them to put on the Ultra Magnus power suit. Okay, and so I believe they captured one of Ultra Magnus's siblings and basically turned him into a mechanical fox that they call the Pet. And the Pet is the one that wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm making sure the Pet is the one that devours, like they use him to devour other robots. So they basically turned him into a dog, a robotic dog. Very painful, according to how they say it. And there are other Transformers that have some of these interesting abilities. I know one of them, like the way he speaks to you, he can convince you. Like he made it so that a Transformer basically turned themselves inside out with their transformation. Really, there's some jarring stuff. These are all robots, but there's some really like uncomfortable stuff in the books. But that's what makes it good. Like some panels are really actually hard to look at. They believe they're serving justice. When purity outweighs purpose, it becomes cannibalistic. Let's just keep that in mind. So once Megatron defected, the ideology collapsed, but he became their next victim on their list. Tarn can't move past it. Megatron was the ultimate betrayal, and so Megatron ends up being on the list. And that actually, Megatron being on the list of the Decepticon Justice Division is actually their downfall, because Megatron was the one that they couldn't, like, as powerful as they were and as feared as they all were. Megatron was the one that they could not get with. And Megatron smoked that he did them filthy. And he pretty much soloed them. Like he soloed the entire crew. And these are robots. These are, they were feared amongst the Autobots. Like even the top ranks of the Autobots did not want anything to do with the Decepticon Justice Division. And so, but Megatron tore through them and showed them the error of their ways. So the concept of the Decepticon Justice Division is the use of justice is kind of ironic because they're committing war crimes. And so justice without empathy becomes tyranny. And I think the reason why it resonates so much, and even when it first came out, when it in the 2010s and stuff like that, it talks about the concept of what we consider justice and how Americans really frame justice. A lot of times justice in the United States is conceived to be endless punishment. We're going to punish you for this term, or sometimes indefinitely, for the thing that you did. Okay. So how do we change and make sure this person's a better person? We're not worried about making them a better person. They need to be punished for the thing that they did. Okay. And a lot of times there are, specifically when you're talking about political affiliations, political in groups and out groups and stuff, you start falling into that tribalistic stuff when deviation away from the cause ends up becoming a source of punishment. Any kind of deviation away from that cause gets met with punishment. Okay. And so instead of seeking truth, it becomes, we need you to adhere to the ideology. And so there were some deeper layers to the Decepticon Justice Division. I'm not going to completely sit here and try to intellectualize pop culture for you, but there was some parallels that they were drawing with that group, and specifically how they treated other members of their species. Essentially, they were the boogeymen of the Transformers universe, um, and they did some pretty horrific things to people in that book. Um, and so when they finally met their end, one of the things as Megatron was dispatching them, he also not only he removed their status as his chief enforcers, but he also removed the names that he had given them, and basically went back and removed their names and gave them their birth names, the names that they actually had before they joined the Decepticon Justice Division. Interesting stuff. Like I said, if you're looking for a comic book series that's really deep, that you can actually 100% immerse yourself in, I cannot recommend IDW Transformers enough. I'm going to keep talking about it until y'all listen to me about it. There's so much there. Even taking the character of Hot Rod and kind of flipping it on his head. And that's probably who I'll talk about next, but I'll give you a quick glimpse into it. Hot Rod, who I grew up, Hot Rod was probably one of the most despised Transformers, like Rodimus Prime. We did not like Rodimus Prime because he got Optimus killed, and that was it. And he was whiny, and he was like not confident. Like he's opposite, the antithesis of what Optimus Prime represented in the books or in the show. So what they did was they kind of made him a punchline, but they made him kind of he's almost like, if I'm comparing him to characters, I would almost say Rodimus is kind of like a Booster Gold, where he's heroic, but you can still kind of laugh at him, but he also is heroic. And so the reason why they call Hot Rod Rodimus Prime, it's a joke. It's it's satire. They're making fun of him, because he's in this leadership position, and they don't necessarily take him seriously as a leader of this group of Autobots on the Lost Light. The Lost Light is a ship that's on a mission to find the Lost Knights of Cybertron and hopefully find a new place for them to live. And so they have an entire side mission that brings them into face to face with Overlord, the Decepticon Justice Division, like some of the scariest parts of the Transformers universe. And Rodimus Prime leads them through all of this. And Rodimus has a big ego. And like I said, they call him Rodimus Prime because it's a sarcastic name, not because he earned the Matrix of Leadership necessarily. He has the capacity to carry it. He just they don't take him seriously at first, and then he kind of grows into this leadership position throughout the book. It's really interesting character arc for him. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about Rodimus Prime next time we talk about the IDW Transformers universe. And I think I will actually spend some time with Megatron story arc, because I know Megatron is probably one of the more confounding story arcs in the IDW universe. But it's also one of the most intriguing ones, because they really spent a lot of time with Megatron's character and making him like the concrete, like the foundation of that entire franchise. And it's not just because he was the villain. He was a lot more than that. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in segment 2. I'm just not. I mean, I'm probably going to revisit this, but I do need to bring this up. I'm not a dumb guy, and I try to lead with my intelligence without belittling other people's intelligence most of the time. I read a lot. I process a lot of information. I do not think that my intelligence is anywhere near absolute. I know that there's more that I don't know than what I do know. And a lot of times I try to speak about things I have a knowledge of. And if I don't necessarily have a knowledge of it, I try to be the first person to tell you. I'm not always perfect with it. And sometimes my ego can get a hold of me, but I really try to be that person that says, if I don't know, I'm going to reserve opinion on this thing. Or if I'm wrong, I will go back and say, yeah, I was wrong on this thing. I've done it a couple of times in conversations. One of the things I realized is, especially when you're entering, and this is part of the reason why I'm getting off Twitter too, but when you enter a political space as a Black person, where you're talking about politics, it's almost like you aren't allowed to have these conversations unless you align with some with the dominant group. I'm gonna say it like that. You have to align politically on one side or the other. And if you don't, instead of attacking you because of your ideological position, they attack your intelligence. Fearless and I were discussing this earlier. I don't necessarily care how you feel about like Harris or Obama or whoever, right? You are allowed to not align with their politics. That's fine. You have your own reasons. I have mine when I don't necessarily align with the politics that they possess. But what you cannot do is sit here and tell me that Obama's a dumb person, because he's not. You can't tell me Harris is a dumb person. She may be flawed in aspects, but she's not a dumb person. And one of the things I realized is, I learned this in corporate. Um, I'm trying to find the way to say this. Um, they don't like smart Black people. A lot of segments of society do not like intelligent Black people. They really don't. They don't like educated Black people. They don't like Black people that know more than they do. Um, they don't like Black people that push against what their ideologies are, force them to drill down. I see the knee-jerk reactions to some of the people, some of the prolific Black writers, and I don't necessarily align with everything Ta-Nehisi Coates said. I think that I feel like his meeting with Ezra Klein was not pointed enough. I feel like he was being way too gracious to that man. I don't always align with Mark Lamont Hill, but I appreciate his intellect. I know that when he talks about something, he probably has a good basis of his knowledge. Just because I don't agree with you does not make you stupid. But for Black folks who have intellect, that happens all the time. All the time. Think about the sister that did the 1619 project. They went after her intelligence. She's not dumb. She's an educated woman. But that was the very first thing her political opponents went to, was their intellect. And it feels like that's literally the first thing that we get attacked on whenever we disagree with somebody who doesn't value our humanity. It's always an insult or a slap at our intellect. Like, we aren't allowed to form opinions that are counter to yours. You know, you have to be stupid. Like, that's what it's got to be. If you don't agree with me, then you must be a dumb person. And I don't necessarily align with that. I disagree with a lot of very intelligent people. Okay. But I also know that being intelligent isn't a cure-all, and being intelligent in one area doesn't mean that you're intelligent in other areas. I'm gonna get to that in a second. Um, and so intellect is really contextual and based on the area of expertise you are operating in. Here's the thing. So I watched, um, the entire thing about people trying to, and Mark Lamont Hill was in this one. People were actively trying to take Dr. Umar. And if you know me personally, I don't really hold Dr. Umar in high regard at all. And I think a lot of it for me is when your chief exploit group of people that you're exploiting are the people that you're purporting to help, and when people call you out on it, you revert to junior high insults, which has happened. I don't hold you in a lot of regard. But I'm watching. One of the things that happened pretty recently, and you could look it up online, people, I think it was Umar's, they were disputing Umar's graduate thesis. Or was it, I think it was his thesis. Let me get this right. Let me make sure I'm active, right? Umar Johnson's doctorate. I think it might have been his doctorate. Yeah. Okay. So they were targeting his dissertation, and you can say a lot of things about it, but one thing Mark Lamont Hill basically said, um, and he brought up was, um, you're targeting his you're targeting his dissertation. Um, what qualifies the person that is questioning his dissertation? What qualifies them to pick it apart? And he was asking from understanding how the committees are formed and all the other inside baseball stuff that you learn when you're doing that people learn when they're doing all this dissertation stuff. I don't purport to be an expert on it, so I will advance that right now. But um, they instantly start targeting his intellect. On he's like, well, I actually sit on committees. I've actually sat on committees and I've been part of this process. I'm asking from a technical standpoint, what qualifies this person? Like, we're not saying that you can't disagree with the dissertation he wrote. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what qualifies you from a technical standpoint, knowing how this technically works. Do you have the experience to critique it from a technical standpoint? Because there's a technical aspect of it, and then there's other sides to it. And so that's what he was questioning, and they started attacking his intellect. It was really a weird thing. And the only thing he's saying is, I know how this process works. I understand technically the technical side of this. There's a technical side to this thing and the academic side. I'm talking about the technical side application of this. What qualifies this individual who is tearing apart this dissertation? What qualifies them from a technical standpoint to question the validity of it? What groundwork, what history do they have with the process? They're not familiar with the process. They're not familiar with the process of the dissertation. So if they're not familiar with the process, then they can't critique the technical aspects of it. They can critique the contents, but not the technical application of it. I'm hoping that makes sense. And they went after his intelligence. It's a very uncomfortable thing. And so I'm saying that to say this. So um I'm in one of those online debates that I keep getting pulled into that I don't want to be in. And for those that don't know, my life before business ownership, I was worked all levels of kids and family services, from residential shelters to uh, case management to family support, back to residential shelters. And in the process, I wasn't a person whose primary job was to rehouse people, but it was part of my job function. And so in the process of that, I had rehomed a couple of dozen families. So I'm familiar with the process of what it takes to get people who need to transition from being homeless to a home. I'm familiar with the process of it. And so we're in the debate about the homeless population in our local city. And invariably, I run into somebody that is, not only are they flattening the entire homeless population by saying they're all drug addicts and blah, 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 but, they don't want help, and, just a lot of the generalizations that aren't necessarily helpful when we're having these kind of conversations. Because it's, I don't want to have this is basically, I don't want to have this conversation because since I don't want to have this conversation, I'm going to make all these blanket generalizations, and just rapid fire them out. So anyway, so what happened was, I pushed back on what this person was saying, and I said, it feels like you're flattening the population and blah, blah, blah. Instantly, it's an attack on my knowledge and my intelligence. And so dude decides he's going to say, well, I got a year working in this field, and this is what I know from a year. And so finally I said, and I didn't get a comment to this. I said, so over the years, I've helped dozens of families through this exact same process that we're talking about. So if your 1 year gives you expertise. What does my almost 20 give me? No comment. I know he called me all kind. He had to call me the hard R after that, bro. Like, there's no way he didn't. But I am not going to back down in an area that is considered my expertise unless I'm dealing with somebody that has a deeper knowledge than I do, or more up to date knowledge, or more robust knowledge. I feel like my experience in that world puts me in some company where I can actually have high level conversations about it. I can still have high level conversations about residential youth care, because that was what a good chunk of that 20 years was tied to. I feel like I can have those high level conversations. But I think what happens is a lot of times people get into disagreements, specifically with Black folks online, and instantly it turns into, well, I'm gonna just insult their intelligence. Okay. And it's not just one side. Like, I don't want to frame it like it's just on the right. On the left, we find there's this weird liberal paternalism, and I want to say liberal / leftist paternalism, where I've encountered this, where they think that they're helping by taking a stand for me against some racist bigot or something else. But let me handle this, Brian. Don't do that. Or getting in there where they try to soften the blow, or over explaining my own points back to me. Like, there's different versions of this where it's basically clamping their hand over my mouth and saying, "Don't worry, Brian, I got this. I'll speak for you." And a lot of Black people have been in that situation where you have the white ally who decides that they are going to put themselves in the position where they're essentially speaking for you. That's not helpful either. I am perfectly able to articulate myself without your outside assistance. Okay. And then the uppity insurgent energy, the drive to put confident Black people in their place. I experienced that in the corporate world a lot. My journey through working with kids and families and working with state-facing agencies wasn't always roses. A lot of times I ran into here's the thing, and this is something y'all got to understand about the city I live in. We live in an extraordinarily segregated city. Okay, it's really segregated here. And so one of the things you find is when you're dealing with workers that come from other parts of town, or where most of their clients are Black, they assume they have these biases where every Black person they interact with is one of their clients. And there's this weird paternalism where they talk down to you or try to over explain very simple concepts to you. It's not a good thing. And so they'll talk to you the same way they talk to their clients, where they have their clients in a specific frame, and they'll try to shove you in there. It's an interesting thing, but if you're Black and you've worked in human services, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you have white workers that have typically worked with a strictly Black population, it's almost like some of them do not know how to interact with Black people who aren't their client base, or who are their peers, or sometimes who are their superiors, because I've run into that as a manager too. And so there's this weird drive to want to take this competent Black person and break them down and put them into their place. And so I encountered that as a supervisor, managing family support workers a couple of different times. I'll tell the story real quick. So one of the things is, for our family support workers, we needed a shared notebook. Now, this is like 2012, 2013, 2014. 2015, in that time frame. So I need to preface this by saying this. So they wanted a resource catalog that our staff could access, that was shared and constantly updated. Okay. And so one of my coworkers and I got put on a work group to work with IT to figure out a solution. And the reason why they brought me on that work group was because I was always the one that was into the latest cloud notebook apps and stuff like that. Like that's how I organized my day. That's how I kept my sanity because I had ADHD, and that's how I kept my sanity. SpringPad was probably the best cloud taking note taking app that has ever existed, and it's gone now. But it was better than Evernote, it's better than Google Keep, it's better than anything that was out. And so I had my own system of and my own little internal system with my staff where I could share resources with them on the go. And so they wanted me to take that and make it something that the entire department, the entire family support department could access. So I was on the work group with IT. And so we're going through different things. And finally, we kind of landed upon they were going to get a SharePoint server and use Microsoft OneNote. Now, this is still early. Like I said, you guys got to be aware of when this was. This is, 2012. This, cloud-based note-taking apps were not ubiquitous at this time. There was a small population of people that were dedicated and power users like I was. So we did the SharePoint server. I actually helped them kind of configure some aspects of the SharePoint server to make it work with what we were trying to do. And so we landed on the SharePoint server. We decided we're going to use OneNote as application to build out this notebook. Now, around this time, the supervisor I was on, it was me and a fellow supervisor. They left. They had another job offer or something. And so I was the one that remained on this. Okay. And her replacement was actually the supervisor's replacement was actually one of her former staff. And so this staff member joins basically at the tail end of everything else. Now, there have been some weird transitions with the IT department. One of the IT guys did not like my black ass. I don't know what it was. I don't know what I did to him. I rubbed him the wrong way. And so, I just got used to that kind of stuff. So they brought in the other supervisor replacement. They brought her in at the tail end. And now we're gearing up to start to launch this thing. And now this is my idea. This is something I came up with. I came up with the application. I came up with the structure of the notebook. I was the one that was kind of the guru on how all this stuff worked. I was the one that put all the resources in the notebook. I got cut out of this project at some point down the line. I don't know necessarily who did it. I'm leaning towards it was probably my current supervisor, my supervisor at the time, but I'm not 100% sure. So they tried to start cutting me out of this project, and I was pissed because I'm like, this is my idea, and you're essentially taking my idea, this thing that I spent blood, sweat, and tears on developing and establishing and stuff, and you're basically attributing it to somebody that joined in the last couple months of the project. And basically she's getting all the credit for this being her idea. And I got all this, that's not good teamwork, that's not this, that's not that. But I can tell you, I sat there and watched after she did that, after they gave her the credit for the idea that I had created, iterated, and launched. They gave her the credit for it. That was like a rocket ship to her career. So I'm not the good team player. Now we're getting ready to launch this thing and we're having the big, huge staff meeting. We're going to launch it. I'm playing the cut, bro. I am not interested in helping these people at all. They cut me out of my own idea. And I'm sitting there watching them fumble, trying to explain how this thing works because they don't know, because I'm the guru. I'm the one that this is literally my stuff in there. And something said, your staff needs to understand how this stuff works at the very least. And so I finally went up there and showed them how everything worked. And I just kind of gave her a glare and said, all right, here it is. Don't ask me for anything else with this. If you guys aren't going to give me the credit, take my name off of it. If you're not going to give me the credit, then essentially take my name off of it and don't ask me for anything else. You can figure out the rest. That got me in trouble. My refusal initial to allow them to silence me and throw me into the corner and steal my ideas, that got me in trouble. I got written up for that, for not being a team player. I wasn't a team player because I wasn't ready to give up a year and a half of my own labor to this white woman and let her take all the credit for it. I wasn't willing to do that. And so I got written up for it. And because I didn't want another write up, I got up there, and when they were trying to launch this thing, I actually I was like, my staff needs to know this. The other thing is, I'm not trying to deal with another disciplinary thing, because there's like, well, Brian, can you help? I'm not going to sit there in front of everybody and say, no, y'all figure it out yourselves. It was kind of being put on the spot. So, but they took my idea and attributed it to her, and put a rocket ship on her back. And I ran into multiple situations like that. Every time I innovated some way to do the job or came up with something to simplify a workflow, I got in trouble for it. I got punished for it. In my office at my job, I didn't have any signal. Like, there was no cell phone signal in the back office. And it wasn't just me, it was pretty much everybody. My office was a dead zone. And so if my staff needed to reach me, and they couldn't call me, because sometimes you were dealing with families, you had to text. You couldn't step out of the room and call. It had to come through a text message. I wouldn't get that text message until I left the office for the day. And it allowed some emergency situations to go haywire. And people like, well, where were you? And it's like, you guys got to understand, this is a dead zone back here. I asked IT what they could do about it. They're not helping out. And so I came up with my own thing. I started a Slack channel for my staff, where we can always text each other regardless of what happens. I got in trouble for that because the supervisor that I had, she said that I was trying to keep things off the record. I had to go over her and say, no, I was problem solving in a way that y'all just don't understand. My office is a dead zone. And since my office is a cell phone dead zone, that means I don't get text messages either. And since all the phones don't have the technology to send text over Wi-Fi, I had to find a way to receive text over Wi-Fi. And so that's what the Slack channel was for. They wanted to write me up for that. Everything I did that was, everything that I presented that wasn't the way that they wanted or in a different way, it was a punishment. It ended up becoming a cudgel. And I ended up leaving. This is somewhere I had spent like almost the better part of 20 years. I had planned on retiring there. And finally I just left. I said, you guys don't value me. And you assume that when I am finding new ways to do the job better, it's got to be punished. I just won't sit around and be ineffective at what you're trying to make me do. So I got more stories behind that. I don't want to spend, that puts me in a bad place. I don't necessarily want to spend too long on it. And I already have. Next segment. And I'm going to power through these next couple of segments. Here's the thing. So one of the things that bothers me about the way that we absorb media and information is now a gossip site somebody could literally just post a lie about a popular person online, and instantly somebody will snatch it up, and next thing you know, it's in a rag. It's in one of these clickbaity celebrity gossips thing. And I think the thing that kind of got me on this was they were talking about Sweetie, and they're saying, oh well, she's doing escort, doing this. Why? I don't really care. I don't care if she does sex work. I don't care. I don't think she does. I think it's a lie somebody made up somewhere. But that's the problem, isn't it? People could get on here and say any kind of lie and it gets wings. Since we have the stronger version actually fact checking. Somebody will fact check by looking up what one gossip site says, and they'll cross check it with another gossip site. And so as a journalism major, that just absolutely galls me. I just cannot stand it. And so that entire Sweetie thing, it just happened a couple days ago, bro. Like, it wasn't even that long ago. It's ridiculous. Like, people on Twitter are making entire 5-minute videos talking about it and giving their opinion on this thing that could be an absolute lie that somebody just made up. But they're giving their opinion like it's a real thing. And when you do that, you're lending credibility to it. And it's just, I don't know. It feels gross nowadays, y'all. The one that sticks out in my mind was when Jaguar Wright was making her rounds in the talk show, in the hip hop talk show circuit, right? And she was just saying any fucking thing, like anything. She was just saying it, heedless of whether it was true or not. Um, we didn't, and there's no way to disprove. There's no way to prove what she was saying. Um, she was in apparently, according to her, she was in every single major conversation with every major black artist between 1994 and 2002. She was in every major conversation because she had all this weird insider knowledge, and she would be sitting up, people would put a mic in front of her and she would just say anything, and then they run with it like it was the truth. And when actual journalists who worked in the hip hop space said her timelines don't match up, this woman has some well documented mental health issues. So sometimes she doesn't even distinguish reality from what's going on in her brain. Why are we putting a mic in front of her and why are y'all listening to it? And there was invariably a thread of people that said, well, she's telling the truth because of blah, blah, blah. She's telling the truth because you're inclined to believe what she says. And she says bad stuff about popular people. And because some of us are wired to inherently dislike people that are popular, you're going to believe all the negative things she's saying. The same crew that was the Beyonce is an occultist, or you know, they doing sacrifices to the devil and they're part of the Illuminati. That same group of folks is acting like they are. A lot of this stuff comes from rationalization. It's not rational the way that they approach this stuff, but it's performed insider authority, and they provide no evidence. Audience are rewarded her confidence by giving her attention. And then when you go on DJ Vlad and stuff like that, you get paid for these appearances. They actually pay people to come on here and say this bullshit. And so not only is she getting rewarded for attention, but she's also getting rewarded financially. And created the speak loud, say names, and get clicks blueprint. And she's not the first person that does this. Like I said, Vlad is a vulture. He's done, like, he built an entire career off of doing this. The next case study I have was Andrew Wiggins. Now, I'm going to tell you something about myself. I'm a Golden State Warriors fan. I've actually been a Golden State Warriors fan since 1993. I had a Warriors bomber jacket in high school. Like, I was invested. My favorite player was Latrell Sprewell. My second favorite player was Chris Webber. When Chris Webber got drafted to the Golden State Warriors, they kind of became like, that was like my dream. Like, wow. And then watching Don Nelson fumble Chris Webber. Anyway, so I follow Warriors news all the time. And there was a couple years ago, Andrew Wiggins took a leave of absence for the team for some family stuff. And so some jackass gets on Twitter or TikTok and literally just invents some rumor that Andrew Wiggins found out that his baby isn't his, and, you know, his wife cheated on him, blah, blah, blah. Just said it. No evidence, just made it up. And when people asked him, like, where's his evidence, he actually came back and said, I'm just talking. But, and then he deleted the video. But the damage has already been done. Insider gossip magazines picked it up and ran with it like it was the God's honest truth. I had friends in a basketball group that actually believed this shit. And they're coming to me saying, yeah, man, his wife just blah, blah, blah. So we don't know anything. There's no verification of anything from any of the sources that I normally get my information from. And when it came out that his dad was actually dealing with some serious illnesses, I'm like, Dad, that's what's happened. No, man, that's not what it was. It was Dad was dealing with some serious issues. No, man. I said, you do realize that you are the dude that said this, that started this rumor, said it wasn't true, and it's just something he made up, right? Okay. The dude on TikTok admitted that he did it for clout, just to get views, but you're still running with it like it's the gospel truth. That was insidious to me. But I see how this mechanism works. Guys, black folks, please stop giving your clicks to these gossip sites. This is how they sustain themselves. By you clicking on the videos, they show you ads, they get paid off the ads. Okay? And they're willing to make up any fabrication that comes across on social media. If you're not going to unsubscribe or stop sharing their stuff, at least go check with the actual media source. I know that trust in journalism is at an all-time low. But I'm begging you to literally go to. I'm begging you to at least fact check what these people are saying to you. I'm proud of people when they found out D'Angelo passed. They heard the rumor that he had passed, and people actually went out and tried to find verification of the thing instead of gossip sites. All right, that gave me a little bit more faith in humanity. Okay, the internet doesn't reward being right; it rewards being first. Okay. We used to have influence. We used to have journalists, bro. Like they had editors and stuff, and they didn't always get things right. But at least if they got something wrong, they would issue a retraction. Now we just got influencers uh, with subscriber counts that they're trying to grow on ring lights. All right, segment 4, quick. This is something I stumbled on the wasp nest, and the hornet's nest on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, by commenting. Like apparently, and this is just, well, I'll do quick. I'm just kind of blasting this. So this is kind of a news brief. So apparently, a thread of text messages dropped, and there's a political article I will show you on my screen. Basically, somehow it got leaked. There was a Telegram chat that got leaked, and in that Telegram chat, it was basically the Young Republicans having a Nazi rally. Like it was some ugly stuff. They're joking about gassing people, sexually assaulting people, killing people, lots of hard R's, lots of slurs, pretty much every slur that you can imagine. And it was a veritable who's who of young influencers within the Republican Party. Stuff like I love, people were saying I love Hitler. I'm ready to burn people now. Black people are monkeys, all kinds of stuff. And so I'm gonna show you a snapshot of what this article has in it, and how I stumbled upon a hornet's nest of neo-Nazis on Twitter, literally just replying under the Young Republicans because they jumped out in front of it, basically saying this doesn't represent us. And I'm like, well, I mean, it had almost the entire leadership of your organization in this thread. It sounds like it represents y'all pretty well. And just by saying that, pretty much every neo-Nazi on Twitter decided that they were going to jump in my mentions. So my question is, so why are all the neo-Nazis hovering around the Young Republicans website? So what's happening here? Watermelon people, we got homophobic slurs and everything. Like you could see some of these. I'm not even going to read some of these. Okay. This is a thread of lots and lots and lots of people. And they're the leader, they're the young leaders of the party. This is how they think. Now we could talk about the political affiliations and all that other stuff. All right. I'm not here to play whataboutism. Somebody tried doing that online. I'm not doing that. I'm taking it at its face. What does this say about if the young leadership of the party is doing stuff like this? And it's not just edgelordy stuff. This stuff that actually can do harm, because they're going to be in positions of power over the people that they are denigrating in this thread. What does this say about where this country is heading? We're cooked, bro. We are so cooked. We are so cooked. Go read the article. It's on Politico. It's wild, bro. It's really a wild ride, but it's not a surprising ride, bro. A lot of the young Republicans are also the 4chan, 8chan, Reddit kids, the edgelord kids, the ones that will sit there and hard R you while you're playing Call of Duty and stuff. This is the same population of kids. Now they're just young adults, and they're still doing some of the same things. Okay, so but yeah, the Telegram chat's up. You guys can go read the article for yourself. I'm not going to read it verbatim, so I'll give you a quick summary of what they said. Slurs, praise for Hitler, violent fantasies about opponents. And it got leaked by somebody on the inside. Racist, anti-Semitic. It was violent messages, and these aren't just random people. These are like recognized political figures. One of them is actually currently in the White House, in the administration. Okay. And so immediately, invariably, when this dropped, you see all the retractions, all the people that were involved in this thread that got outed were making their apologies and saying there's no place for this kind of stuff. A couple of GOP leaders were saying people need to resign. The reason why they were saying they need to resign is not because of the thread existed, not because they participated in the thread, it's because the thread was discovered. Let's keep it 100%. This thing doesn't exist without a lot of people's knowledge, bro. Like, a lot of people had these knowledges. Okay. Um, and so when it got exposed, all the roaches kind of started running for the light. Um, People, like I said, started the apology. People demanding people step down on stuff. They knew that they were participating. They're sorry because they got caught. But understand, this is the up and coming leadership of the party. And typically what happens when something egregious like this happens, it doesn't destroy their careers internally within the framework of the party. It they go away for a little bit and then they come back wearing a different hat. So it is what it is. If y'all want to talk about that a little bit more, I can talk about a little bit more. But I have been trolled by neo-Nazis on Twitter regarding this thing, and so it just makes me question who's actively invested in this thing. Last thing, I'm gonna talk about Raw Dog and ADHD. This is segment 5. Talk about Raw Dog and ADHD and my journey with it as an adult. So I'll run it down. I was an adopted kid. My mom adopted me when I was like 2 weeks old. I was very fortunate I didn't have to linger in foster care for that long. But I was adopted. I don't really know anything about my biological parents. I still don't know to this day. I do know what my mom told me. And so the story she used to tell me was that I was like, as I was growing up, I was I was nonverbal, like not just my language was delayed or my speech was delayed. I was nonverbal um, from like 18 months to like 3 years old. I didn't talk. And so my mom told me that they kind of started preparing her for a life of dealing with a developmentally delayed kid. Now, this is the early 80s, and so they definitely didn't say developmentally delayed, if you know what I mean. So they start preparing her for that raising a kid with special needs. And then one day I just started talking in full sentences. Just that was just it. And my mom said, "Well, I guess he didn't have anything to say before." Okay. I think this might have been kind of the first sign that my brain worked differently. And I know that there's informal and formal and informal ways of describing it. The informal way is like it can be Einstein syndrome, it could be some kind of autism, whatever. But I just didn't speak. And then one day I just started speaking in complete sentences, and I wasn't behind, I wasn't lagging or anything. And actually, my verbal acuity was a little bit ahead of the game. But I think that was kind of the first sign. Um, at that point, I got, my mom said that they had diagnosed me with ADHD when I was little, but it was primarily inattentive, which means all the hyperactivity, like it would occasionally the hyperactivity would manifest, and I'll be scurrying around the house, but more times than not, it was a very hyperactive imagination where I would like my daydreaming ability, my ability to zone out and daydream is still incredible and get lost in thought. And so I was diagnosed, but I was untreated because I was still a good student. I was still smart enough to pass all the classes. I didn't really need help. It really didn't hit me until middle way through high school. And even then, stuff that it was within my power to fix. When I really absolutely got smacked upside the head with ADHD and my struggles was when I hit college, and I actually had to study for my grade. Like I couldn't just kind of snooze through the class and then just be smart enough to pick up on things. Okay. But at the time I didn't know. I just thought I was stupid. I did. I was the gifted kid. I had been gifted in the gifted classes my entire life. I had done the high IQ stuff. I did all the high IQ smarty pants stuff. But I got to college and I thought I was stupid because I couldn't figure it out. I could figure it out for classes I liked, but I could not force myself to sit through classes I did not like. Okay. And so I struggled through college. I lost a full ride academic scholarship. Um, and I learned how to do masking pretty at a pretty high level. Um, and masking and dealing with burnout and stuff like that. I did pretty well with that piece of it. I could think back all the conversations I had with my mom where, she's like, the teacher's saying you can do the work and stuff like that. And it's like, but how long did you know that I had ADHD? And why did you just let me kind of struggle with that piece of it? Like, why would you let me just think I'm stupid? Like, and I don't think she did. I don't think it was not intentional, but her goal was, her thing was, I had done fine in school up until that point, and so she just assumed that I could continue on that path without any kind of medication or anything, and so we never followed up on the original diagnosis. And so I get into the workforce, and I was fortunate enough. My first job was something that didn't necessarily, all I had to do was ritualize my day and I get through the day. I was working in direct care, working with kids directly. And so my day kind of flowed along with what their day was. All I had to do was ritualize my stuff to make sure the kids got meds on time, make sure I had dinner on the table on time, like stuff like that. Okay. Um, but when it came time to get a real job, and in my mind, a real job was I wanted a 9 to 5 so I could be home with my kids in the evening. That's when it really smacked me. And so I took a job with case management and instantly realized that this was an impossible job. And hindsight being 2020 was an impossible job for somebody who didn't have ADHD, but for somebody with ADHD, it was an absolute nightmare. Um, Nothing had any specific priority. Everything had equal priority. Everything was equally important. Everything was due at the same time. There was no rhyme or reason to how any of this stuff works. And they basically dropped us into a job that normally required 6 months training. And I had 30 days of training to do a job that normally was 6 months of training. So yeah, it was all fun. It was really fun. Um, and so I actually, one weekend I was at home, really like dreading going to work on Monday, like absolutely dreading it because like literally that job was tough to the point where one of my office mates like had a psychotic break sitting right next to me. Like it was bad. It was scary. Um, in the cubicle next to me. And she just said and was gone. I'm sitting at home dreading going to work the next day, and I happened to I came across this special on, and I'll never forget the name. I came across this special on what's it? It's not NPR, public PBS, called "Is It You, Me, or the ADHD?" And I watched that special and watched these people tell my story. So I go back to my mom and said, um, "I saw this special about you, me, or ADHD." And I'm wondering if this is something that I probably should get checked out. She's like, "Oh yeah, you have the ADHD. We found that out when you were little." Thanks. And so I go and get my re-diagnosis. I had to deal with the doctor. I come in. I had to deal with because normally I went to university and I was dealing with somebody that was they had an attending physician. Yeah, I was dealing with a resident, and I go through all the stuff, a psychiatric resident. I go through all the diagnosis stuff, and basically, I'm explaining what my issue is, and how bad I'm struggling at work, and how I'm trying to keep up on all this other stuff. And I had checked all the marks for inattentive ADHD. It's not I don't think it's I don't think it's a subtype anymore. I don't think they recognize it as a specific subtype anymore. And since they're finding like there's so much cross pollination between autism and ADHD, I don't even think they consider. I don't know. Anyway. She goes through the assessment and says, "Yeah, I think you might be a candidate for medicine." And I wasn't looking for medicine one way or the other. I was just looking for help. And so she goes back and talks to the attending, and sight unseen, this guy decides I am drug seeking and puts me on all these like these hardline anti-anxiety meds, and essentially made me a zombie in one way, where I couldn't even function to do my job. Like I had to go to court to talk about to try to talk to the judge about one of my clients, and the words would not escape my mouth. It was bad. So anyway, I'm like, okay, I'm not drug seeking. I don't, but this is not help. I came to you for help and you didn't provide me help. So I actually see a nurse practitioner who specialized in treating adults with ADHD. And so I got help. And so they tried me out on a couple of different medicines, Strattera, which didn't necessarily work too well. But then also, I was expecting some kind of miracle with the medicine. So I might have had my bar set way too high. But we played around different formulations. Finally, we landed on Vyvanse. And Vyvanse seemed to work pretty well for me from a task management standpoint. Now, from an interpersonal standpoint, it was an absolute disaster. It brought my focus up, but absolutely zapped my personality. All the fun loving things I used to do, reading comic books and all that stuff, ended up getting replaced by this taciturn, really stern, unfun individual. And I didn't see it, but my wife did, and that really put a strain on us. It really did. And essentially, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to do this so that I can further my career. I can finally get ahead in my career and I can stop struggling for once. You know, at that time, for once in my life, organization and work came super, super easy for me. But it also it killed my sense of humor. It made me flat. It was just a flat affect. And so I went through this whole thing. It was this journey that I was on for about a year and a half, 2 years. And when it got to the breaking point, it finally got to the breaking point. And we had the talk, and I finally said, okay, let me see if coming off this medication is going to help. Because some of the things you're describing are things the doctor mentioned that I should be on the lookout for, and I didn't see it, and so I didn't bring it up. And so I got in trouble for that too, because, but it was a conversation. And so I cold turkeyed Vyvanse and got my personality back. And it was like, she's like, it was night and day. I came off the medicine, turned back into who I was. She loved me for my ADHD. She loved me for the way my mind worked and leaped around and stuff. Not for the messiness, not for the inability to focus and stuff, but it is what it is. It absolutely zapped my creativity, and my creative drive came back. I was playing with my kids again. Like I was a different person off of that stuff. And so I cold turkeyed it. And so I raw dogged ADHD for, the rest of my career, essentially. But I realized when I started life as an entrepreneur that I needed some kind of help. And I was really leery about going back on medication. One of the things I'd always been on was methylfolate because they did some gene testing and found I don't process folic acid, and that causes some stuff with depression and some ADHD type symptoms. And so it's just basically a food supplement where it's just a metabolized form of folic acid. And that's always been something that I could take. But even when I came off the medicine, I took that and nothing else. And, I saw meds as my key to success, and I tied my worth to my productivity. And I thought if I stopped, I'd lose everything I built. And I realized that when I came off my medicine, it wasn't the fact that I was incapable of doing the job I was in. I was in the wrong job. I needed to get back to residential. I needed to get back to the shelter work, running shelters and stuff like that I had enjoyed. And so I got back to that. I came on my medicine. Like I said, I was still doing the methylfolate and stuff. And I did that for a while. And I raw dogged ADHD for the better part of not 8 years. But fast forward till now. I'm running my businesses. I'm underwater. I'm taking on too many different tasks. I need help. And so I spoke to the doctor I'm currently seeing. And so we're trying, he suggested, well, since you can't do stimulants because you have some genetic stuff with your blood pressure, we need to try something else. And so now I'm doing the Wellbutrin methylfolate stuff. And Wellbutrin's been great. And so maybe this is the thing. But I've matured enough where I don't expect the medicine to have superpowers. I don't expect it to alter aspects of my life. And I'm happy with that. I'm not expecting it to make me into a super productive robot. I'm happy with that. So a couple of things I learned about being an adult with ADHD. I learned that I am high energy and high attention, typically in the mornings, um, and midday. This morning was different. I was struggling this morning. I had an early morning meeting at 7:30, and I was not. I was struggling. Okay. Um, After 4 p.m., it's not great for work. It's more great for like kind of creative pursuits and more conversational, fun stuff. So I've planned my life around that rhythm of how my body naturally works. Okay. I still do get burnout. I still really do struggle with rejection sensitivity. That's why sometimes even posting here is hard, because I post stuff and I'm like, I hope the audience aligns with it. Okay. I learned the first thing is I need to give myself grace. Okay. And I also learned that some of my ADHD quirks are actually strengths. I can focus, I can parallel process on ways that people I can do multiple things at the same time and still maintain some quality aspects to it. Um, and sometimes I have to parallel process in order to be able to get through tasks. Like if I'm editing a video, sometimes I got to turn on the PlayStation just to have something that I can shift off of when I overload myself. Okay. This is how it works. And so I've been giving myself peace with it. Um, you know, I did mess around and take, just out of curiosity, just because of my history with nonverbal stuff. And that was my life before. Like I was on the path to, like, I'll be honest with you, I was on my path to getting my master's in clinical counseling. Like I was right there. That's one of the reasons why I ended up leaving the job, because they lied to me about it. I was about to get my full ride scholarship, have my master's taken care of for clinical counseling, and I got it yanked out from me at the 11th hour. But I had gone through it. I've done a lot of the coursework. I've read a lot of stuff independently or whatnot. And so I knew enough that I knew that the ADHD and autism, they do exist. And you can have they exist in the same people often. And so I went ahead and did all the assessments and everything. And I know self-assessment is an absolutely slippery slope, and I'm not trying to fall down it. But I will say this from the self-assessments. Self-assessment said, I definitely need to go talk to a doctor and get checked out. And so that's probably going to be my next mission. RFK got me a little bit off of that mission, but it's something that I need to know for me. Okay. Um, the understanding and self-understanding is better than the meds, but the meds help me get through my day. Okay. My brain isn't broken. It's just built differently. And so I plan my life around how my brain actually works. So wrapping this up, and I'm thinking that my Tuesday night live stream, I'm probably going to start recapping it on TikTok, because I haven't quite figured out what I want to use TikTok live for. I think I'm just recap my live stream there and play some games and stuff and kind of relax. So let's talk about what we discussed tonight. We talked about control, truth, and empathy. I talked about empathy regarding the passing of D'Angelo and Chadwick, and utilize some empathy and some self-discipline, and try to avoid commenting on people's personal appearances, especially if it's drastic. Typically, that's an indicator of something being wrong with them. And it's utilizing some kind of grace. Okay. We talked about the Decepticon Justice Division because I needed to talk about comic books, especially since I'm talking about all this heavy political stuff. Talked about the gossip economy in a lot of these gossip rags and stuff, and how it's driven by your attention. If you don't give attention to it, these gossip sites die on the vine. And hopefully I shared a little bit of insight about my ADHD journey as an adult. Hopefully if something you've been thinking about, if you think that there could be a possibility, go out and get yourself your diagnosis so that you can have peace of mind, so that you can put strategies in place to help yourself. It's not just medication, guys. There's strategies. There's other things you can learn to cope, as long as you know what the issue is. Don't be like me and just carry this thing around and think that there's something broken in your brain. Okay. So let me know what you guys thought. If you see this anywhere, like, share, and subscribe. I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up. I got to get upstairs and make sure the kids ate dinner. We got to get ready for school the next day. So we got to get ready for school tomorrow. So I will talk to y'all later. Be easy. Peace.